Hi everyone, it's great to have you all tuning in today for the second interview in our Quantum Conversation series. I'm Dianaya, the UK Ambassador of Girls in Quantum, and today we are delighted to have Wenmiao join us. Wenmiao Yu is an entrepreneur focused on translating scientific innovation into marketable products. She is a co-founder and director of business development at Quantum Dice, an Oxford University spin-out enabling encryption through a self-certifying quantum random number generator. Her responsibilities include fundraising and leading quantum technology market creation. After reading chemistry at the University of Oxford and co-founding Quantum Dice, Wen Miao was the youngest person to be awarded an Enterprise Fellowship at the Quantum Technology Enterprise Centre in Bristol, and recently she is featured on Forbes Technology 30 Under 30. As a thought leader, she actively advocates for equality, diversity, and inclusion, mentoring students in the Oxford Women in Business Society and playing an active role on the Committee for New Voices in Space as a part of the Scottish Space Leadership Council. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here today to share your experiences and knowledge.
Likewise, great to be here as well, Dia, and looking forward to our conversation.
So, to start off with, we'd like to ask, what would you say your earliest memory exploring STEM was?
Oh, good question. So I think one of my earliest memories exploring STEM was actually building a volcano as part of a science project. And I think we did it by pouring Mentos, like the sweet, into a bottle of Coke. But then we also had to build the actual volcanoes around it. So I think that was the first part about learning about the type of physical experiment. And of course, it was also quite creative. So I really like how that experiment allowed me and also my friends at the time to use both our creativity, but also to learn about the scientific processes behind it as well.
So you discussed like how the volcano project also allowed you to explore your creativity. So how important do you think that as a scientist creativity is? Because it's something that's quite overlooked, especially in the STEM fields, but I think it's very important.
I completely agree with you. So I think that creativity and also being able to communicate scientific concepts to a wider audience is super important. I think if I think back to the most engaging science teachers that I had at school or during A level, they were always the ones who could really kind of explain sometimes really complex theories in a way that both made sense, but also was really interesting for myself and also the rest of the class. And then I think having worked in quantum technologies for the past few years, and also having kind of had the majority of my focus be on creating a market for quantum random numbers generators, I've really started to appreciate just how important it is to have good science communication as a key skill within almost any business function in a company, whether it's in kind of tech development or in market communications as well.
And it's really great to hear that creativity is something that should be leveraged in every part of society. So, you discussed a little bit about school. So, adding to that, what would you say your favourite subject was while studying at school?
Oh, good question. So I would have to actually say that my favorite subject whilst I was at school was actually English. So I loved reading when I was growing up, and I loved reading all types of books. So whether it was from fiction to science fantasy to like historical fiction. And I have to confess that I don't think I read that many science-focused books whilst growing up. And I think that the first piece of scientific literature that I actually began to read seriously into was during my master's project when we had to read a lot of scientific papers. But I do remember there was a book that one of my chemistry teachers really recommended that we read, and this was when we were doing A levels as well, was called The Disappearing Spoon. And it's kind of like a fun pop science book, kind of trying to explain how each of the elements were discovered and by who and the kind of backstory behind that. So that helped to bring the whole kind of concept of chemistry and the different building blocks of chemistry alive for me. And that was also a part of why I decided to choose to study chemistry at university after doing my A levels here.
And I think it's really important to note that, as you said, you really enjoyed reading when you were younger, and that translated to your master's program when you had to read a lot of literature. So I feel like no matter what field of study you're interested in, reading is always a really essential skill. So it's really nice to hear that. So moving on to your university, as you said, you studied chemistry, and how did you find that experience?
Yeah, so I really enjoyed that chemistry. I think the course what I did was structured in quite an interesting way. So at Oxford, the first 3 years are kind of almost all based on written exams. And the last year was completely dedicated to doing your own research project. So it was kind of similar to the first year of a PhD, where in my last year I spent all my time embedded within a research group and I had ownership of my own research project. And my master's thesis was using electrochemistry and also transmission electron microscopy to look at the internal structure of platinum nanoparticles and seeing how they affected certain reactions. But I think the main learnings that I took away from that, alongside, I guess, learning about how to do science research, is actually a lot about how to work with a wider team. So a team of PhDs and postdocs who are also in my group, as well as then how to pick out and distill the more useful pieces of information from those of the experiments, and then how to write that into an introduction or into a summary that goes into my thesis to really kind of effectively communicate the key findings in a really succinct way to someone who was maybe in science but not necessarily in this particular field of chemistry.
Your thesis sounds really incredible. And you noted a really important point about scientific communication and how essential it is to make sure that any ideas that are kind of theorized is one quality to be able to kind of come up with those concepts, but then it's a completely different quality to be able to share that with the wider world. So that's really important to hear. Thank you very much. And now the next question is, how do you think your degree in chemistry translated to quantum technology?
Oh, really good question. So I think, I guess I see this in two ways. So one of the ways was actually the fundamental science theory behind quantum mechanics, which we learned through our quantum chemistry courses throughout the first 3 years of my degree. But I think the other was actually the ability to really self-learn. And I think this was something that was really focused on and also highlighted throughout all my 4 years at Oxford. And I think our teachers really, really encouraged every single one of the students to, really take their own initiative and to be really proactive when it comes to problem solving or trying to find the right people who can help you learn about new topics or to work through different problem sets. And I think it's this mindset that I was then able to build upon and also take when I did the Student Entrepreneurs Program. So this was the STEP Ignite program that Oxford University ran, that I met my Quantum Dice co-founders through. And it was through this program where I was able to, I, of course, build upon the existing scientific knowledge, but then start to try and build up a network of people who could help myself and as my co-founders to help us develop the market for quantum technologies, or to help us or to help connect us to other industry links within the quantum and also related ecosystems here in the UK to help us, for example, build proof of concepts or to apply for different types of government grant funding, such as INVEST UK funding, to help de-risk the really early stages of our company when it was just an unfunded startup. And I think a lot of what I do right now in my role as the Director of Business Development is basically working with clients, and some of them are users who are really well versed in general technology, but perhaps not as focused on quantum random number generation as me or my team have been. And it's really working with them to help them understand how quantum technologies differ from classical technologies, but then also to work with them to help them identify what potential business problems they can solve using quantum technologies, and then to work with them to design projects to help validate that, and then to, in the end, translate that into a business value for their company. So it's kind of quite a long process, but I think it allows me to use a lot of the skills I've learned at university both during and also after my degree. So a lot of it is, as you said earlier, in science communications, in helping to structure a problem, in helping to really kind of bring together quite a diverse group of people to focus on a particular project at one point in time.
Thank you. That was a really thorough answer, and it was really interesting to hear how two fields that have some things in common, chemistry and quantum technology, how they are connected in a really fundamental way. And it's really interesting to note that a lot of people in the technology industry have degrees in a variety of different areas, such as chemistry and physics. But it's really important to note that all these different fields are very interlinked, and there's a lot of transferable skills, which means that you can kind of move between different industries, which is just as you did. So it's really great to hear that. So you mentioned that obviously at A level you would have learned a few of the fundamental quantum concepts, but what would you say is your most memorable first encounter with the field of quantum?
Ooh. So I think the most memorable first encounter was in my second year of university, where I think all the students doing chemistry as their main degree could choose a supplementary course to kind of do another exam, but also to get some more credits for. And we could choose between kind of medicinal chemistry, crystallography, history and philosophy of science, or quantum. And I chose quantum because I really enjoyed working with the particular tutor that we had at that time. I thought he was an amazing tutor, really good at explaining concepts. So that meant that I spent quite a bit more time than I would have in my second year, specifically looking at the theory behind quantum mechanics and how that plays into quantum chemistry. But at the time, I really wouldn't have imagined that 2 years later, I would then found my first startup in quantum technologies. So I guess things do happen for a reason, but it's but I do remember when I first met my Quantumized co-founders and first heard about the technology behind quantum data. I just thought that this was quite a nice coincidence.
That's really great to hear, and it's so lovely to hear that this small program allowed you to gain so much. So now we'll be moving on to the second segment of our interview, focusing more on your career and your life at Quantum Dice. So, as you mentioned, you were introduced to an enterprise program, but what particularly led you to found Quantum Dice?
Ooh, so I think when I was going through university, I took part in different internships during the different summers when I was at university, and I think it just slowly led me towards entrepreneurship. So I think in the summer of my first year, I wanted to see what doing R&D was like in an actual research lab. And so I spent 3 months at a university lab in Singapore doing my own biochemistry project. And I think I really enjoyed that experience, but I think that taught me that perhaps working as an R&D scientist in a lab wasn't what I wanted most in my career. And so in the summer of my second year, I applied for a patent attorney's internship. And I interned for 2 weeks at Dent's Patent and Trademark Attorneys. And it was during this process that I actually first learned about how scientific innovations from universities were commercialized. And from the patent attorney's perspective is how is it protected and how can future IP generated by a company be protected and leveraged in a commercial setting. But of course, it was only a 2 week placement. And I wanted to learn a bit more about the commercialization and the adoption of new technologies in larger organizations. And so in my third year at university, I spent, I think it was 10 weeks interning at Centrica in the digital procurement department. And there I really learned about the processes of how a really large company would go about identifying and then finally adopting new pieces of technology. And then in my fourth year, Oxford ran its first student entrepreneurs program, and this was led by Oxford University Innovation, which is the R&D translation arm of the department. and also sponsored in part by Oxford Science Enterprises, which is Oxford's local venture capital firm. And it was a 4-week-long program, and it gave students access to university IP and also university patents. And I actually formed Quantum Dice with my 4 other co-founders because we all wanted to specifically work with this patent for a self-certifying quantum random number generator. And over that initial 4 weeks, we had lessons and masterclasses in the morning, so learning about how to do an initial market research, competitor landscaping, and also how to create a pitch deck. So at the end of the 4 weeks, we pitched our initial business idea for Quantum Dice to directors from Oxford University Innovation, as well as investors from OSC, the local VC firm. And we were awarded some prize funding, and this allowed us to produce our first batch of prototype quantum random number generator products. And also, out of pure luck, during that program, the directors for the Quantum Technology Enterprise Centre in Bristol were visiting Oxford. And so they were introduced to our team, and they mentioned that they had these Quantum Technology Enterprise Fellowship programs available. So it was kind of funding a year's worth of salary, as well as providing a really generous business development grant to companies that could take part. And because back in 2019, myself and also George, one of my other co-founders, had just graduated from university, we were able to apply for this program and do it full-time. And that gave 2 founders salaries to work full-time on this project. And it also gave Quantum Dice a really generous kind of product development as well as market development grant, which we used to form alliances with early adopter customers. And also, of course, the team at the Quantum Technology Enterprise Centre was formed of a lot of really successful ex-entrepreneurs, as well as people who were familiar with helping to translate university research into products in the quantum world. And so we were able to do our first fundraise through the course of that program, which meant that back in 2020, we were able to kind of set up our own offices independently in Oxford and to start hiring as soon as we had raised that first round of VC funding.
That's a really incredible journey to hear how it started with a 4-week program and then it's become so big. And every part of the journey sounds so inspirational. So it's really incredible to hear how you were able to kind of start this company from scratch. So thank you very much. So leading on from that, what would you say is the thing you enjoy the most about entrepreneurship?
Oh, okay. Well, I think that a lot of the successes we have had, going back to your earlier point, was only possible because of the really incredible team of co-founders that I was fortunate enough to meet really early on in my entrepreneurship journey. And I think that for any kind of future startup founders, I think a key part of a startup success is in finding that really close group of people that you share really similar work ethics with. And then I think going back to your question, I think that what I enjoy the most about entrepreneurship is really the opportunity to learn as much as I can at the pace that I want to. And I think there are so many amazing programs supporting entrepreneurs at different stages. So if there are startup programs such as the Creative Disruption Lab or the Quantum Technology Enterprise Centre, and then there are also scale-up programs to support entrepreneurs who are at the stage of growing and also scaling with businesses. So one example is the Royal Academy of Engineering Enterprise Hub's Short Scale-Up program that I just completed. And it's really incredible because it's all kind of funded and it gives you access to really, really experienced practitioners in kind of accessing new markets, people and culture, as well as giving really generous grants that allows entrepreneurs to take top-up classes. So, for example, I was in Harvard to do the program on negotiation at Harvard Law School because I knew and I felt that I wanted to increase my awareness of negotiation skills. So I think there are just loads of opportunities like that, which I know that I've been able to access because I was a startup founder. And I think it really reflects well on the supportive and really constructive startup ecosystem that the UK has.
That's really great to hear. So, um, now this is quite a generic question, but what would you say your day is like at Quantum Dice?
Oh, good question. So I think no day is really the same, but today, for example, my day began with catching up on emails with some of our business mentors, and then working on a pricing spreadsheet for some of our commercial products. And then I had a call with one of our new commercial hires. So we are currently growing our commercial team, and I had a call with one of our new team to talk through some of our pricing strategies. And then, of course, I have this lovely block of time to have a conversation with yourself. And then afterwards, I think it's following up with some of my other team members to make sure that we have the right documents in place, and to follow up with some of the leads that we have been talking to as well.
That sounds great. It sounds like a very varied day where you both get to speak to a lot of different people. And that's a really interesting and fulfilling part of entrepreneurship, I guess, being able to network with so many different people. So that's really nice to hear. So, more about Quantum Dice. Where do you see Quantum Dice expanding or focusing its efforts in the next few years?
Cool. So I think in the next few years, the main focus on Quantum Dice would be to kind of really start to work with more customers, and helping them to learn how to use the quantum random number generator products that we already have, and working with them to identify potentially even new applications for quantum random number generators outside of security. And I think for me personally, a big part of my focus over the next few years, or even over the next year, is in making sure that my team has access to the best resources possible, so that they can really effectively carry out their responsibilities, but also to make sure that my team has enough access to resources and opportunities for self-development as well. So I think at Quantum Dice, we're really keen to support all of our employees, and we also want to start thinking about how career progression at Quantum Dice could look at. And of course, we're quite a young startup, so this is something new that we are only just starting to look at. But it's something that I personally think is really important to have in place. So a really good structure and really good plan to make sure that our employees are supported, and to make sure that we keep on attracting really, really talented individuals, even from overseas, to come and work in the UK within the quantum sector.
That's lovely to hear, and it's really nice to hear that particularly you're focusing on self-development and progression for all your employees, which is a really important part of making a startup successful. But it's incredible to hear that you have a lot of plans for your startup in the next following years, because the way I see it, the only way that Quantum Dice can go is just keep growing and growing. So it's really amazing to hear about Quantum Dice. So, what do you think are the particularly exciting upcoming quantum initiatives in the UK and in the wider world that you think you'd like to share?
Yeah, well, so I think the UK government's kind of quantum strategy that they announced a few weeks ago, the 2.5 billion to quantum tech, that's really encouraging for the whole ecosystem. So from companies doing kind of quantum random number generators all the way to companies doing quantum computing. I think for me, the most exciting initiatives are actually the ones such as Girls in Quantum, where where we're really starting to spread awareness of quantum technologies to those outside of our particular industry. So I really, really do support and really encourage the work that you and all your colleagues are doing, and especially so in kind of sharing just how interesting a career in quantum technologies could be, even to students who are still at school. And I think that to this end, the Institute of Physics also has a new quantum business innovation and growth group. And I think the team there are really keen to engage with schools across the UK or universities to really help, make sure that there is a world-class talent pool to then join the quantum workforce in the right time.
That's great to hear. And especially in the UK, we really need to encourage more people to be interested in quantum computing so that its role in the quantum world will get larger and larger. So that's really great to hear. So now, a kind of concluding question for the careers part of this interview. What do you think are the key takeaways that you've learned throughout your career so far?
So I think the main takeaway that I've learned so far is that generally you won't know until you try. And I think a lot of the key advances that we've had in terms of fundraising or in terms of market development has been through just me or one of my co-founders really taking the risk and doing something new. And also being able to handle rejections as well. I think that's a really key skill that I've learned over the past few years as a startup founder.
That's really great to hear. And the kind of like different aspects of a growth mindset, like being able to take risks and being able to handle rejection, I think is really important in any walk of life, but especially in a field such as entrepreneurship, where you have to kind of take a lot of risks in order to get something going. And I think that's really important that you shared that. So that's a really great answer. Thank you so much. So
Right, that's
now,
right. Sorry. And I was also going to say, I think because quantum technologies is still quite a nascent industry, I think I think a lot of the early adopters of quantum technologies, whether they're in, smaller companies or in international organizations, they're also themselves risk takers. But I think that's part of the beauty of working in quantum, and that's because it's such a nascent industry, but it's really fast growing. And it really takes this whole network of innovative and also open-minded individuals to drive the growth of this particular industry.
so now we'll move on to the final section of our interview, which will be handling advice and how more people can get involved in quantum technology. So, my first question is what would you recommend for high school students and people in the younger age group to get involved with quantum?
Well, I think that kind of becoming involved with initiatives such as Girls in Quantum or Women in Quantum, I think that's always a really good first step. I think a lot of the larger companies also have quantum internship schemes. And I also think that the Catchbox centres across the UK also do a lot of outreach and also engagement activities with schools. So they're good ones to reach out to as well. Ones to note are, I guess, the Satellite Applications Catapult, as well as the Compound Semiconductor Applications Catapult. And of course, the UK-wide bodies, such as the Institute of Physics, also have quantum focus groups, and they're always really keen to help young people engage with the quantum sector and the quantum industry.
I think as a young person myself, I would say that the best way to get involved with quantum computing is to look far and wide and see if there's any initiatives that you can get involved in. And as you said before, use that growth mindset to kind of take a risk and just put yourself out there. I think that's the most important thing. So, how do you believe that we can encourage more women in particular to kind of explore the STEM industry and explore careers in quantum technology?
I think that's a really timely question. I think one of the ways that I've seen it work well is for the women who are already working with quantum or working in quantum to just continue talking about the work that they do to make sure that there's visibility, that women can have a place and have a role to play in developing the quantum industry or in doing quantum research at universities. And also I think a lot of the work that you do as well by, for example, having this podcast is great because that's probably the first place that a young girl who's interested in quantum would probably go to. And it's a really interesting way for them, for kind of children at school to learn about quantum technologies and to start thinking about where and also how they want to play a part in that.
And I completely agree with the kind of concept of having people lead by example because for me, one of the most inspiring things is having a role model to kind of look up to. So having people who are currently in the world of quantum already coming forward and speaking, raising their visibility, I think is really important, and it really empowers young girls that they have a place in the industry, and that will make them much more motivated to work towards it. So now we're going to move on to a few questions which were handed in from our Girls in Quantum community. So the first question is, do you need to be a physicist to learn quantum? And I think you did kind of mention it before, but is there anything you'd like to add?
Oh, okay, I'll probably give you a statistic. So I think 60% of Quantum Dice's founding team did not come from a physics background. I think that can probably speak for itself.
That's great to hear. And as you mentioned before, you read chemistry, and a lot of other different people in quantum dice and the quantum industry in general probably would have come from many different areas of study. So it's really important to kind of note that as long as you have those kind of transferable skills, then you have a place in the quantum industry. So that's really nice to hear. So another question is, how do you think that having a startup in comparison to kind of having a place in a multinational corporation, how do you think that these two roles vary, and why do you think you chose more of the entrepreneurship route? I know you mentioned this before, but anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, well, I guess I can only, speak to my own personal motivations. But I think what I really personally enjoyed about being a startup founder is really having ownership over my own project and being able to work really closely with the co-founding team to really kind of build that project from the idea stage to something that's a bit more concrete. And I think I personally get a lot of satisfaction in seeing that growth and seeing that progress. But of course, I think in larger companies, it's also a great place to start a career because there are loads of more experienced people with business experience or technical experience that you can directly go to because you're working in the same company. But I think in the end, I think I've seen successful entrepreneurs come from both a SME background as well as a large corporation background. So I think in the end, it is just choosing the path that makes you the most satisfied and that offers you the most opportunity to learn.
That's a really great answer, and I completely agree with the kind of belief that a startup gives you a lot of ownership and a feeling of personable kind of experiences when you have a startup, because you have a lot more of a role in your company. But joining a multinational corporation also allows you to gain the experience of so many different people from many walks of life. So I think that there are definitely pros and cons to both of them. And it's really nice to hear your personal experience of how you chose a startup. So now the next question is, how do you think that quantum technology has the ability to impact the wider world, and what particular use cases do you think have the most impact on society?
Yeah, well, I think the use case that we focus on at Quantum Dice is in using the really fundamental properties of quantum mechanics to ensure cybersecurity for us. And I think the reason why we find this problem or this challenge so compelling is because we are living in an increasingly digitized world. And I think this makes our lives a lot easier. So, for example, you and I are able to have this conversation without having met each other, right? That's incredible. Then as we transfer a lot of our working and as our private lives online, we do have to think about the future security of those data and that personal data. And that really is the problem that we are interested and also really keen to help address at Quantum Dice.
Completely agree that one of the most compelling applications of quantum technology is in cybersecurity because, as you said, the world is becoming more and more digitalized, and the world is so data driven in the 21st century. So everything, almost everything, is online. So now it's really important as we continue to ensure that people's privacy stays an utmost priority. So I think that it's a really interesting application. So now, another question. What would you say that one of the limitations of quantum technology is right now? What would you say are the largest limitations?
Ooh, so I would actually say one of the largest limitations of quantum technologies now is in the communication aspect. And I think this comes down to how well can the developers or founders of quantum tech companies communicate the existing capabilities that their technologies have to people outside of the scientific community. Because I think it could potentially be quite dangerous if there was a mismatch in expectations from the general public of what a piece of technology can or can't do versus what its actual capabilities are. So I think ensuring that there's a really clear and also thorough communication channel or kind of communication mechanism or even messaging and words to make sure that the public has, I guess, the best grasp possible of what existing quantum technologies can do.
Yes, I completely agree. And I feel that quantum technology in particular, there's a lot of misinformation going out in the current world, and there's a lot of kind of sensationalization of what quantum technology might be. So the kind of general public view it as something kind of science fiction-esque, or they view it as something that they don't really want to interact with. As soon as they hear the word quantum, they're like, oh, that's beyond my kind of line of thinking. But I think that with clear communication, it can really be explained to the general public. So I think that's a really good answer. And how would you say that at Quantum Dice you're kind of trying to mitigate these limitations and overcome them?
Yeah, so I think one way that we've been quite consciously doing that is trying to speak with as many stakeholders as possible across all types of industries, especially those outside of quantum technologies, to really understand and to get a feel for where their current understanding of quantum tech is, and then kind of understanding what their kind of expected ways of communication are, and trying to find out what type of communication styles work best to engage with them. So I think we've done a lot of, I guess, landscaping and also foundation building work, and which means that right now we're able to ensure that the messaging we send to any of our kind of potential clients or partners is clear, and it really gets the point across in a clear way.
That's a really great answer. Thank you so much. So, we have now come to the end of our interview with all the questions that we have prepared, both from the Girls in Quantum team and also our wider community. And it's been an absolute pleasure to have this discussion with you, to have you share your experiences and your knowledge. So, thank you so much for being here today. Before we end, is there any questions you have? Or anything you'd like to conclude with?
Yeah, I think, Dia, I'm really interested to see where your interest in quantum began. I'd love to hear a bit more about that story.
So I feel like I have always been interested in kind of the science realm of thinking from a young age. I've always enjoyed maths and science, and particularly I feel like my interest for computer science like came to fruition like in year 9 as I was exploring different career paths, and I think it began with exploring different computer science initiatives that were organised by the government. And one particular initiative that I really enjoyed getting involved with is the Cyber Discovery Programme, which was organised by GCHQ for encouraging more students to get involved in the realm of cybersecurity, and it allowed me to learn a lot of new skills in the program. And from there, I decided that I definitely wanted to forge a path in the world of technology. And from there, I began to kind of explore different fields. And one that really stuck out to me is quantum computing. And I think that my first kind of memorable encounter, like I asked you, was reading a really captivating book, which was Competing with Quantum Cats by John Gribbin. And I felt like that was a really interesting kind of introductory kind of book to quantum computing, as it was really well explained. Every key concept was very simply explained, in the sense that something particularly with quantum physics is that there's this really common phrase that, oh, if you understand quantum physics, then you don't really understand quantum physics, because it's something that really baffles mankind. But I think that that novel really helped me to kind of grasp the key concepts. So it was really interesting to start from that point. And another thing that I really kind of was captivated by in quantum computing is the fact that it's quite it's quite an industry that's in its infancy still. It has a lot of scope for the future, a lot of opportunity to kind of grow and evolve. And I think that it's really captivating to me to kind of be part of an industry that has a lot of opportunity to grow, because it means that I can have a really impactful part of that industry. I can really make my mark. So that's why I was really interested in quantum computing, and kind of exploring from there. I found the organization Girls in Quantum, and following becoming the UK ambassador, I feel like it's been a really amazing opportunity to kind of network with so many different people and encourage more girls to get involved in the world of science, and particularly in quantum, because going to a girls' school myself, I always feel like, although a lot of girls in my school explore the fields of STEM very thoroughly, there's definitely a kind of aversion towards physics and the physical sciences in particular. We have almost 70% of people who are medicine aspirants, but we only have about 11 people in my physics class, whereas our biology and chemistry classes are completely full. And same in my computer science class, there's only 11 people. So I feel like by joining quantum computing through Girls in Quantum, I feel like it will really inspire more girls to kind of explore this world of technology that is often kind of disregarded by girls, as they kind of feel an aversion towards it. But I think that having different role models for you really allows you to kind of see that you have a place in this world.
So. Yeah, that's definitely true. I definitely kind of resonate with kind of UV on how important role models are. And I think I also went to a girls' school, and I think the split between interest in kind of physics and computer science versus biology, chemistry, it was quite significant as well. Why do you think it is then that I guess there's a kind of decrease in the number of girls who choose to study physics for A levels, and then even kind of physics or engineering at universities?
Well, I think that it is a very strange thing that doesn't really have a clear explanation, in the sense that I guess the kind of reasoning by a lot of people who I know is the reason that, oh, it's like a male dominated profession. But the best way to kind of eliminate that stereotype is for you to be the change. So, for example, some really striking statistics that I've encountered recently is that physics appears to be one of the most male dominated professions in the world. And another really striking thing is that large leadership roles in industry, in computer science, only 11% of those are women. So I think that in a way, a lot of young girls are kind of put off by these statistics, in the sense that they believe that because it's a male-dominated profession, they'd rather kind of stray away from it. But what's really important to kind of remember is that the way to kind of change that statistic is for you to be the change. So I think that that is definitely something that we're definitely inspired to do.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm really excited to see what impact and what to see all the impact that I'm sure you'll make within the world of quantum.
Thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you here today. Thank you so much for that incredibly captivating conversation. We explored so many different things, and I really hope that when this interview is released, that all our audience really enjoys it. And if you have any questions following this, then feel free to contact any of us at the Girls in Quantum team. So thank you so much for being here today. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much.
Likewise. Thank you very much, Dia.